Prince Harry has announced the title of his memoirs, a book that's now coming out in January. And the title, I have to say, says it all. It's called Spare, as in, heir and a spare. His whole reason for his sorry existence was just to be the spare royal in case Brother William fell over and couldn't become the next king. And now that there's William himself has got an heir, then there's no point about Harry at all. And if you think I'm reading too much self-pity in this title, well, take the Spanish version. It's called Life in the Shadows. Elsewhere it's translated into reserve or even leftover. A leftover in the shadows. Poor, poor me. Now, joining me from London is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Tom, thank you so much for your time. Now, when Harry and his wife Meghan Markle, they quit Britain 3 years ago, he announced that, this geographic balance living in the US will be providing our family with the space to focus on the next chapter. Yet, 3 years on, rather than write the next chapter of his life, he's writing again and again chapters about the old one. What do you make of all this?
Well, in a way, it's an admission of the fact that neither Harry or Meghan like to admit, which is that the reason that they're at all famous or of note in the first place is because they were working members of the royal family. They try to escape it, and then they find that when they end up in Hollywood, people don't find them nearly as interesting or as compelling on their own terms. I also think, Prince Harry is a bit of a victim of our kind of therapeutic era. He feels like he's constantly got to rake over the past, constantly got to see himself as either the hero or the victim in his own particular story. I don't think that's very good for him, and it's certainly not very good look for the royal family, which are constantly seeing these kinds of stories hauled over the coals, when the whole point of this was that they were going to move on and carve out a private life. It's a funny kind of private life when you're constantly talking about your own experiences in the media and in your own ghost-written biographies, as it were.
It's kind of weird, I was just the spare. Look, there's the heir who happens to be his brother. Seems to be a little bit of sibling rivalry, a little bit of jealousy here going on. But, woe's me, I'm not the heir, I'm the spare. Tom, I don't want to break it to you. Well, I'm going to break it to you on national TV. You're not going to be the king. I'm not going to be the king. There are billions of people on this planet who won't be the next king of Britain. I don't know why Harry thinks that because it's only the spare and not the heir, that his life was harsh and meaningless and now needs therapy to get over it.
That is it, isn't it? At the end of the day, as difficult a life as Harry's had in some respects, bereavement at a young age, all these things that are very difficult. It is with Harry and Meghan, it is essentially a duke and a duchess complaining about how bad they've got it. And that just wears thin pretty quickly. And they try and dress up the backlash to them as people being anti-progressive or anti-diverse, or this is racism by proxy or whatever. That's the thing that's always grated the British public, people around the world, is you're essentially royals, literal royals, who want to tell us how bad you've got it, especially given the times that we're in now. It's just really not going to wash, is it?
Oh, for heaven's sake. Oh, give us a break. Tom, Britain's now got yet another new Prime Minister this year. You've had 3 so far. This is pretty good. I mean, one day you'll get one that you want to keep. Rishi Sunak it is, the first of Indian background. But in the US, you've got TV host Trevor Noah still insisting that Sunak's rise still proves that Britain is racist because there's been, he says, a backlash. Here he is.
Watching the story of Rishi Sunak becoming England's first prime minister of colour, of Indian descent, of all of these things, and then seeing the backlash is one of the more telling, it's just one of the more telling things about how people view the role that they or their people have played in history. And what I mean by that is this. You hear a lot of the people saying, oh, they're taking over. Now the Indians are going to take over Great Britain, and what's next, and what? And I always find myself going, so what? No, but stick with me here. So what? What are you afraid of?
Tom, is Trevor Noah right that there's been a racist backlash and worthy of him having a big rant on TV in the US about it?
There's been no racist backlash whatsoever. I don't know who Trevor Noah hangs out with or has been talking to, but you struggle to find someone in Britain who is concerned about Rishi Sunak being PM on the basis of his heritage. I mean, there was a poll a couple of years ago in 2020 by Number Crunch Politics. They found that there's basically about 9% of the country who would be concerned about the prospect of a non-white Prime Minister. It's 9% more than I'd like to see, but it's still a marginal view in British public life. This is one of the things that actually has been quite striking about Rishi Sunak's ascension, is that it hasn't really passed with either the backlash or the kind of over-egged celebration of how far we've come. It's almost passed without incident to a large extent. And I think that speaks to one of the really positive things about this country, is that we are quite at ease with our ethnic, religious diversity, if you like. I think what you're seeing Trevor Noah do there is what you always see from people from the vantage point of America, is they take America's racial politics and they just try to impose it on everywhere else. And I think now more than ever, we just need to say that that needs to stop, because there's, that narrative doesn't even necessarily suit America, let alone other countries like Britain or Australia or anywhere else.
This also is true with the preconceptions about the Conservative Party. It'll always be the racist stick in the mud one that needs affirmative action, even though it's produced all three of Britain's female prime ministers, Britain's first Jewish prime minister, Britain's Catholic prime minister, now a prime minister of Indian background. At some stage, though, both you and I, we've got to stop doing this little ticker box identity politics thing, because we should be as blind to all this as we wish that society was, shouldn't we?
I completely agree. I think as I was saying before, we're in Rishi Sunak's ascension, we're almost starting to see that. It wasn't like a kind of Obama 2008 situation in which so much was invested in it. And because I think even when you kind of try to celebrate these things, as we should to a certain degree, it can end up effectively setting people up to fail, and also treating non-white politicians as separate, as different, as not to be judged on their record and their character and so on, but to be kind of symbols, to be kind of mascots. And the fact that hasn't happened with Rishi Sunak, I actually think is to Britain's credit in that respect.